Now as they passed by in the morning, as he returned to the city, he was hungry. Seeing a fig tree by the road, he came to it and found nothing on it but leaves. He said to it, "Let there be no fruit from you forever." Immediately they saw the fig tree withered away from the roots. When some of the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, "How did the fig tree immediately wither away?" Peter, remembering, said to him, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree which you cursed has withered away." Jesus answered them, "Have faith in God, for most certainly I tell you, if you have faith and no doubt, you will not only do what was done to the fig tree, but even if you told this mountain, be taken up and cast into the sea, and doesn't doubt in his heart, but believes what he says is happening, he shall have whatever he says. It would be done. Therefore, I tell you, all things, whatever you pray and ask for, believe that you have received them, and you shall have them. Whenever you stand praying, forgive, if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father who is in heaven may also forgive you your transgressions. But if you do not forgive, neither will your Father in heaven forgive your transgressions." When they had come to Jerusalem, on one of those days, as he was teaching the people and preaching the good news, and as he was walking in the temple, the chief priests came to him with the elders of the people. They began asking to him, "Tell us, by what authority do you do these things? Or, who is giving you this authority to do these things?" Jesus said to them, "I also will ask you one question, which if you tell me, I likewise will tell you by what authority I do these things. Tell me the baptism of John. Where was it from? From heaven or from men? Answer me." They reasoned with themselves, saying, "If we should say, from heaven, he will ask us, 'Why then did you not believe him?' But if we say, 'From men,' all the people will stone us, for they are persuaded that John was a prophet." They answered Jesus and said, "We don't know." Jesus also said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things. What do you think? A man had 2 sons, and he came to the first and said, 'Son, go work today in my vineyard.' He answered, 'I will not.' But afterward he changed his mind and went. He came to the second and said the same thing. He answered, 'I go, sir.' But he didn't go. Which of the 2 did the will of his father?" They said to him, "The first." Jesus said to them, "Most certainly I tell you that the tax collectors and the prostitutes are entering into God's kingdom before you. For John came to you in a way of righteousness, and you didn't believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes believed him. When you saw it, you didn't even repent afterward, that you might believe him." He began to speak to them in parables. There was a man who was a master of a household who planted a vineyard and rented it out to some farmers. He put a hedge around it, dug a wine press in it, built a tower, rented it out to farmers, and went into another country for a long time. At the proper season, the season for the fruit came near. He sent his servants to the farmers to get from the farmer his share of the fruit for the vineyard. But the farmers took his servants, beat one, killed another, and stoned another, took him, beat him, and sent him away empty. Again, he sent out other servants to them, more than the first, and they treated them the same way. They also beat him, and threw stones at him, wounded him in the head, treated him shamefully, and sent him away empty. Again he sent yet a third. They also wounded him, they killed him, they threw him out. Many others, beating some and killing some. But afterward the Lord of the vineyard said, "What shall I do?" Still having one, his beloved son, he sent him to them last, his son, saying, "I will send my beloved son. It may be that seeing him they will respect my son." But those farmers, when they saw the son, they reasoned themselves, saying, "This is the heir. Come, let's kill him, and the inheritance will be ours." So they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. When therefore the Lord of the vineyard comes, what will he do to them? When they heard it, they told him, "May it never be. He will come and miserably destroy those miserable men, and will lease out the vineyard to others, who will give him the fruit in its season." But Jesus looked and said to them, "Haven't you even read the scriptures? That is written, The stone which the builders rejected, the same was made the head of the chief cornerstone. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, but it will crush whomever it falls on to dust. This was from the Lord. It is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore, I tell you, God's kingdom will be taken away from you and will be given to a nation producing its fruit. He who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces, but on whomever it will fall, it will scatter him as dust. When the chief priest and the Pharisees heard his parables, they received that he spoke against them. They tried to seize him, but they feared the multitude, because they considered him to be a prophet. They left him and went away. Jesus answered and spoke again in parables to them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who made a marriage feast for his son, and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the marriage feast, but they would not come. Again he sent out other servants, saying, Tell those who are invited, Behold, I have prepared my dinner. My cattle and my fatlings are killed, and all things are ready. Come to the marriage feast. But they made light of it and went their ways, one to his own farm, another to his merchandise, and the rest grabbed his servants and treated them shamefully and killed them. When the king heard that, he was angry, and sent his armies, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. When he said to his servants, The wedding is ready, but those who weren't invited weren't worthy. Go therefore to the intersections of the highways, and as many as you may find, invite to the marriage feast. Those servants went out into the highways and gathered together as many as they found, both bad and good. The wedding was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he saw there a man who didn't have on wedding clothing. And he said to him, Friend, how did you come in here not wearing wedding clothing? He was speechless. Then the king said to the servants, Bind him hand and foot, take him away, and throw him into the outer darkness. There is where the weeping and grinding of teeth will be, for many are called, but few are chosen. Then the Pharisees, chief priests, and the scribes went and took counsel how they might entrap him in his talk. They sought to lay hands on him that very hour. But they feared the people, for they knew he had spoken this parable against them. They watched him and sent out spies who pretended to be righteous, that they might trap him in something he said, so as to deliver him up to the power and authority of the governor. They sent some of the Pharisees and of the Herodians to him, that they might trap him with words. When they had come, they asked him, Teacher, we know that you are honest. Say and teach what is right. Teach the way of God in truth, no matter whom you teach, for you aren't partial, and don't defer to anyone, but truly teach the way of God. Tell us, therefore, what do you think? Is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Shall we give, or shall we not give? But Jesus perceived, and knowing their crafty wickedness and hypocrisy, he said to them, Why do you test me, you hypocrites? Show me the tax money. Bring me a denarius, that I might see it. They brought to him a denarius. He asked them, Whose is this image and inscription on it? They answered him, Caesar's. And Jesus answered them, Give therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. When they heard it, they weren't able to trap him in his words before the people. They marveled greatly at his answer, and were silent, and left him and went away. On that day, some of the Sadducees came to him, those who say that there is no resurrection. They asked him, saying, Teacher, Moses wrote to us, If a man dies and leaves a wife behind him, having no children, and his brother should marry his wife and raise up children for his brother. Now there were with us 7 brothers. The first took a wife, and dying left no offspring. Having no offspring, left his wife to his brother. In the same way, the second also took her, and died, leaving no children behind him. The third likewise to the 7th, and all left no children, and died. Last of them all, the woman also died. Therefore, when they rise in the resurrection, whose wife of them will she be? For the 7 all had her as a wife. But Jesus answered them, Isn't this because you are mistaken, not knowing the Scriptures, nor the power of God? For in the resurrection, when they will rise from the dead, those who are considered worthy to attain to that age and the resurrection from the dead, They neither marry nor are given in marriage, for they can't die any more, but are like God's angels in heaven, and are children of God, being children of the resurrection. The children of this age marry and are given in marriage, but that the dead are raised. Haven't you read that which was spoken to you by God? In the book of Moses showed at the bush how God spoke to him, saying, I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now God is not the God of the dead, but of the living, for all are alive to him. You are therefore badly mistaken. When the multitudes heard it, they were astonished at his teaching. But the Pharisees, when they heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, gathered themselves and questioned together. One of the scribes, a lawyer, came, knowing that he had answered them well, asked him a question, testing him. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment of all in the law? Jesus answered him, The greatest is, Hear, Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love your Lord, your God, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first and great commandment. A second is like this. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. The whole law and the prophets depend on those two commandments. There is no other commandment greater than these. The scribe said to him, Truly, teacher, you have said well that he is one, and there is none other but he, and to love him with all the heart, and with all the understanding, and with all the strength, and to love his neighbor as himself, is more important than all whole burnt offerings and sacrifices. When Jesus saw that he answered wisely, he said to him, You are not far from God's kingdom. No one dared ask him any question after that. Now while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them a question as he taught in the temple. What do you think of the Christ? Whose son is he? They said to him, Of David. How is it that the scribes say that the Christ is the son of David? How then does David in the Spirit call him Lord? For David himself said in the Holy Spirit, in the book of Psalms, The Lord said to my Lord, Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. If then David himself calls him Lord, so how is he his son? No one was able to answer him a word. The common people heard him gladly. Some of the scribes answered, Teacher, you speak well. They didn't dare to ask him any more questions from that day forward. Then Jesus spoke to the multitudes and to his disciples, saying, The scribes and the Pharisees sat on Moses' seat. All things, therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, observe and do, but don't do their works, for they say, and don't do. For they bind heavy burdens that are grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not lift a finger to help them. But all their works they do to be seen by men. They make their phylacteries broad, enlarge the fringes of their garments, and love the place of honor at feast, the best seats in the synagogues, the salutations in the marketplaces, and to be called Rabbi, Rabbi by men. But don't you be called Rabbi, for one is your teacher, the Christ, and all of you are brothers. Call no man on the earth your father, for no one is your father, he who is in heaven. Neither be called masters, for one is your master, the Christ. But he who is greatest among you will be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. The common people heard him gladly. In the hearing of all people, he said to his disciples, he said to them, Beware of the scribes who like to walk in long robes and love to get greetings in the marketplaces, and the best seats in the synagogues, and the best places at feasts. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses, and as a pretense you make long prayers, therefore you will receive greater condemnation. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men, for you don't enter in yourselves, neither do you allow those who are entering in to enter. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you travel around by sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he becomes one, you made him twice as much of a son of Gehenna as yourselves. Woe to you, you blind guides, who say, Whoever swears by the temple, it is nothing, but whoever swears by the gold of the temple, he is obligated. You blind fools, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? Whoever swears by the altar, it is nothing, but whoever swears by the gift that is on it, he is obligated? You blind fools! For which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift? He therefore who swears by the altar swears by it, and by everything on it. He who swears by the temple swears by it, and by him who is living in it. He who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God, and by him who sits on it. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you tithe mint, dill, and cumin, and have left undone the weightier matters of law, justice, mercy, and faith. But you ought to have done these, and not to have left the other undone, you blind guides, who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within they are full of extortion and unrighteousness. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and of the platter, that its outside may become clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitened tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but inwardly are full of dead men's bones and of all uncleanliness. Even so, you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inwardly you are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the tombs of the righteous, and say, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we wouldn't have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Therefore you testify to yourselves that you are children of those who killed the prophets. Fill up, then, the measure of your fathers. You serpents, you offspring of vipers, how will you escape the judgment of Gehenna? Therefore, behold, I send to you prophets, wise men, and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city, that on you may come all righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah son of Berechiah, whom you killed between the sanctuary and the altar. Most certainly I tell you, all these things will come upon this generation. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I would have gathered your children together, even as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you would not. Behold, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me from now on until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Jesus sat down opposite the treasury and saw the rich people who were putting their gifts into the treasury. Many who were rich cast in much. He saw a certain poor widow came, and she cast in 2 small brass coins, which equal in quadrans coin. He called his disciples to himself and said to them, most certainly I tell you, this poor widow gave more than all those who are giving into the treasury. For they all these put in gifts for God from their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, gave all that she had to live on. Jesus went out from the temple and was going on his way, and as some were talking about the temple and how it was decorated with beautiful stones and gifts, his disciples came to him to show the buildings of the temple. One of his disciples said to him, Teacher, see what kind of stones and what kind of buildings. But Jesus answered him, You see all of these things, great buildings, don't you? As for these things which you see, the days will come in which, most certainly I tell you, there will not be left here one stone on another that will not be thrown down. As he sat on the Mount of Olives opposite of the temple, the disciples, Peter, James, John, and Andrew, came to him privately, asking him, Teacher, tell us, when will these things be? What is the sign of your coming, that these things are all about to happen, to be fulfilled, and of the end of the age? Jesus answering began to tell them, Watch out, be careful that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and the time is at hand, and I am the Christ, and he will lead many astray. Therefore, don't follow them. When you will hear of wars and disturbances and rumors of wars, see that you aren't troubled. For all these things must happen first, but the end is not yet, and the end won't come immediately. Then he said to them, Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and troubles, plagues. There will be great earthquakes in various places. There will be terrors and great signs from heaven. But all these things, which are the beginning of birth pains. But watch yourselves, For before all these things they will lay their hands on you and will persecute you, delivering you up to oppression, to councils, to synagogues and prisons, and bringing you before kings and governors for my name's sake will kill you. You will be beaten in synagogues, and you will be hated by all of the nations for my name's sake. Then many will stumble and will deliver up one another and will hate one another. It will turn out as a testimony for you. You will stand before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony to them. Many prophets will arise and will lead many astray. Because iniquity will be multiplied, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end, the same will be saved. This good news of the kingdom must first be preached in the whole world, to all the nations, for a testimony, and then the end will come. When they lead you away and deliver you up, don't be anxious beforehand. Settle it therefore in your hearts not to premeditate what you will say or how to answer, but say whatever will be given to you in that hour. I will give you a mouth and wisdom which all your adversaries will not be able to withstand or to contradict. For it is not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. Brother will deliver up brother to death, and the father his child. Children will rise up against parents and cause them to be put to death, even by relatives and friends. You will be hated by all men for my name's sake, but he who endures to the end, the same will be saved, and not a hair of your head will perish. By your endurance you will win your lives. But when, therefore, you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place where he ought not, let the reader understand. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is at hand. Let those who are in the middle of her depart. Let those who are in the country not enter in. Then enter those who are in Judea. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let them who is on the housetop not go down to take out things that are in his house. Let him who is in the field not return back to get his clothes. For these are days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe to those who are pregnant and to nursing mothers in those days. Pray that your flight will not be in the winter, nor on the Sabbath. For in those days, then there will be great oppression, great distress in the land, and wrath to this people, such has not been like from the beginning of the creation of the world, which God created until now, no, and never will be. They will fall by the edge of the sword and will be led captive into all the nations. Jerusalem will be trampled down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars, and on the earth anxiety of nations, in perplexity for the roaring of the sea and the waves, men fainting for fear, and for expectation of the things which are coming on the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Unless those days had been shortened, no flesh would have been saved. But for the sake of the chosen ones, whom he picked out, those days will be shortened. Then if anyone tells you, look, here is the Christ, or look, there, don't believe it. For there will arise false Christs and false prophets, and they will show great signs and wonders, that they may lead astray, if possible, even the chosen ones. But you watch. Behold, I have told you all things beforehand. If therefore they tell you, behold, he is in the wilderness, don't go out. Behold, he is in the inner rooms, don't believe it. For as the lightning flashes from the east, and is seen even to the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For wherever the carcass is, there is where the vultures gather together. But immediately after the oppression in those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will be falling from the sky, for the powers that are in the heavens will be shaken, and then they will see the sign of the Son of Man. Then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of the sky with great power and great glory. Then he will send out his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his chosen ones from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. But when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is near. He told them, now from the fig tree and all the trees, learn this parable. When its branch has now become tender, when they are already budding and produce its leaves, you see it and know by your own selves that the summer is already near. Even so, you also, when you see all these things coming to pass, know that God's kingdom is near. Even at the doors, most certainly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things are accomplished. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But no one knows of that day and hour, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but only my Father. Watch, keep alert, and pray, for you don't know when the time is. As the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days, which were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ship, and they didn't know until the flood came and took them all away, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. 2 women grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one will be left. Watch therefore, for you don't know in what hour your Lord comes. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what watch of the night the thief was coming, he would have watched and would not have allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore also be ready, for in an hour that you don't expect the Son of Man will come. Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord has sent over his household, to give them their food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom the Lord finds doing so when he comes. Most certainly I tell you that he will set him over all that he has. But if that evil servant should say in his heart, my Lord is delaying his coming, and begins to beat his fellow servants and eat and drink with the drunkards, the Lord of that servant will come in a day that he doesn't expect it, and in an hour when he doesn't know it, and will cut him in pieces and appoint his portion with the hypocrites. There is where the weeping and grinding of teeth will be. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. Those who were foolish, when they took their lamps, took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. Now while the bridegroom delayed, they all slumbered and slept. But at midnight there was a cry, behold, the bridegroom is coming. Come out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise answered, saying, what if there isn't enough for us and you? You go rather to those who sell, and buy for yourselves. While they went away to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Afterward the other virgins also came, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered, most certainly I tell you, I don't know you. Watch therefore, for you don't know the day or the hour in which the Son of Man is coming. For it is like a man traveling into another country, who called his own servants and entrusted his goods to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his own ability, having left his house and given authority to his servants, and to each one his work, and also commanded the doorkeeper to keep watch. Therefore, for you don't know when the Lord of the house is coming, whether at evening or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he might find you sleeping. What I tell you, I tell all, watch. He went on his journey. Immediately he who received the 5 talents went and traded with them, and made another 5 talents. In the same way he also who got the 2 gained another 2. But he who received the 1 talent went away and dug in the earth, and hid his Lord's money. Now after a long time the Lord of those servants came and reconciled accounts with them. He who received the 5 talents came and brought another 5 talents, saying, Lord, you delivered to me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained another 5 talents besides them. His Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will set you over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. He also, who got the 2 talents, came and said, Lord, you delivered to me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained another 2 talents besides them. His Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will set you over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came and said, Lord, I knew that you are a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not scatter. I was afraid and went away and hid your talent in the earth. Behold, you have what is yours. But the Lord answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap before I didn't sow, and gather where I didn't scatter. You ought therefore to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received back my own with interest. Take away, therefore, the talent from him, and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who doesn't have, even that which he has will be taken away. Throw out the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. But when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. Before him all the nations will be gathered, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then the king will tell those on his right hand, Come, blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? When did we see you as a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? The king will answer them, Most certainly I tell you, because you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me. Then he will say also to those on the left hand, Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire, which is prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you didn't give me food to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you didn't take me in, naked, and you didn't clothe me, sick and in prison, and you didn't visit me. Then they will also answer, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and didn't help you? Then he will answer them, saying, Most certainly I tell you, because you didn't do it to one of the least of these, you didn't do it to me. These will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. So be careful, or your hearts will be loaded down with carousing, drunkenness, and cares of this life. And that day will come on you suddenly, for it will come like a snare on all those who dwell on the surface of the earth. Therefore be watchful all the time, praying that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will happen and to stand before the Son of Man. When Jesus had finished all these words, he said to his disciples, You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified. Then the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders of the people were gathered together in the court of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas. They took counsel together that they might take Jesus by deceit and kill him. But they said, Not during the feast, lest a riot occur among the people.